Hello and welcome to the instructional video on the 2015 Autotrail Tracker FB. Run you around the outside and then we'll go on to the inside of the vehicle. So first things first, the bonnet release catch on these is just here, so that's that. It's got concertina blinds for darkening the front section of the motorhome, so they're operated by sliding across this blind like that. When you put these back, just make sure you go straight with this here to stop any of the blinds catching, and then to release them you just pinch these two in like that and that releases the blind. Exactly the same thing on the front here, so pinch those two together, draw that across, and there's a magnetic strip on the front here which corresponds to another magnetic strip on the other side, so that's how they draw together. There's a little bit there, a recess, that will allow for the reversing camera as you draw them across, so you can see how that fits into that recess there. Again, just draw those across in a straight line, just make sure they are properly in position, because when you're traveling, if they're not clicked in, if they come across, they can impede your vision while you're traveling. The tyre pressures are on this pillar here, but it's worth referring to the actual tyres themselves, because sometimes they use specialist tyres with reinforced sidewalls and therefore greater pressures. To rotate the seats on this model, it's this little catch here on the front of the seats, so they are pulled like that, and then that will allow you to rotate the captain's chairs like so. So that's how you rotate the seats. So underneath the bonnet then, just lift the bonnet up. So we have washer fluid fill, coolant, brake fluid, oil fill, dipstick. If you ever need to jump start this vehicle, then there is the terminals under the bonnet. The battery is housed underneath the passengers, on the passenger side where the passenger seat go, passenger's feet would go. There's a floor covering which needs to be removed to reveal the engine battery. So if you ever need to jump start it, you put a positive terminal on here, so your red cable onto here, and that's your earth terminal, so you put the black cable onto there. So that's if you ever need to jump start another vehicle or jump start this vehicle. So working on around the motorhome then, you've got your gas locker in here, opened via these tabs here, which are lockable. They're lockable. The previous owner of this has had gas-low refillable bottles on it, so that is now redundant, but there is the inline regulator, which is that device there. On the end of that is a threaded section that will receive a flexible hose, like a pigtail, that will go into the individual bottles, and I've actually got one of those for you. So the individual bottles, one there, and then the flexible hose that screws into the end of that pipe there, and then the other end goes into your bottles, which can be swapped over when one becomes empty. So working on around the vehicle, and this has been fitted with a handle stroke security device. To move this, you pull this down, and then that will allow you to swing the handle around. So if you swing the handle around to that position, then obviously it creates additional security. If you have it in the middle section, in the middle position, like so, then it's just a handle to gain access to the motorhome more easily. So this model's been fitted with an external gas valve. So the valve is just here, and the gas appliance that you're going to connect to it, the flexible hose, just pushes onto this section here, and then this sort of winged section pushes into there, and then you turn it around, and then that gives you access to the gas supply from the bottles, so it's handy for an external barbecue, etc. So that's what that device is. The previous owner of this vehicle, they've had this external aerial socket fitted. Now we're not sure whether that's a feed in or a feed out, but this model has actually got its own aerial, so unless you want to watch television outside or hook up into a super pitch where they'll give you cable television, then that probably will be redundant. This here is the exhaust for the boiler, so whenever the boiler is in use, this will exhaust. Particularly when it's being used on gas, you'll see steam rising from here, particularly in cold conditions, so it's nothing to worry about, but that's just the exhaust for the gas boiler. You need to make sure that's kept free of debris and kept clean, because sometimes if you're parking next to a hedge, you can get things coming into here which will impede the use of the boiler. This is where the fresh water is filled, so you just push this in and turn it around. So you just need to unlock it first. It's a lockable cap, this one. So fresh water into there just with a hose pipe until it literally pours back out. So that's how you fill the fresh water tank, which will need draining in winter or whenever you're not using it, but I'll show you that when we get to that point. You've got a storage area here that's accessible from outside and inside. It's the area that's underneath the bed. There is a drain here for the boiler, so you've got obviously the hot water boiler, which is a 10-litre boiler which will need draining down. If water's left in there and it's left to freeze, it will expand, it will crack the tank and all the corresponding pipe work. The drain for this is here, so that's in the usable and closed position. So whenever you're using the motorhome and you want to retain the water in the boiler, that's the position it should be in. To open it, it's in the vertical position like that. So closed is either side, horizontal, open is vertical. So that's the drain for the fresh water boiler, and it's really important that that gets drained down whenever you're not using the vehicle, and particularly in cold conditions. If water's left in there and it freezes, it will damage the boiler. In here we have the carpets, the winder for the awning. There's a winder here that I think is for corner steadies underneath the vehicle. Let's just have a look. Yeah, so there your corner steadies just there. And the winder, that winder is inserted into this hole here on the back of the chassis, just there. And that will allow you to wind down the corner steadies to steady the vehicle. So the winder with the red handle, that's what that is. That's a strengthening beam for the awning when you wound it out to tension the fabric on the awning. So working around the motorhome then, this model's been fitted with a bike rack. To use the bike rack, you just flip this down. The bikes themselves sit on these rails. These catches go over the bike wheels, and like a ratchet strap, they go over the bike wheels. These bars and straps here go onto the crossbar of the bikes, and that's what keeps it in position. Your reversing camera lens is just up there. Again, needs to be kept clean. If it gets wet, then it will distort the vision that you get through the monitor on the dashboard. So working around the motorhome again, then we have the toilet waste cassette. So all the toilet waste ends up in here. To empty this, you pull this lever up here, slide the cassette out, so to empty that, you pull this nozzle across here like that, take the cap off the end, unscrew that, and pour the liquid out of the end of it. As you're doing so, press that button in there. It lets air in as the liquid is coming out to stop spillages and glugging. This requires the chemical, so you put the chemical into this cassette and it breaks down all the solids and gets rid of all the smells. To do that, you slide this section back here and open up the valve there, put the required amount of chemical into it, and then a little bit of water into the bottom, and then it's ready to use again once you've emptied it. It does have wheels on it, so it can be wheeled over to the disposal point, and an extendable handle that comes out of this section here, so that's how you transport it over to the disposal point. These two drain taps here to drain down the fresh water tank. What this does is, because there's two taps, it allows you to drain down to, you can see there it's labelled up travel drain. So one tap will completely drain the tank and one will drain it down to usually 20 litres. The one on the left here, that will drain it down to like a usable amount, 20 litres. The one on the right is tapped into the very bottom of the tank, so that will drain it down completely. So you've got travel, usage of your fresh water, and then complete drain. So they're the two taps to do that. This model has a external shower If you've been walking and you've got dirty boots, or dog owners tend to like this function, then this is the hose that goes into the shower point, and it's just plugged in like that and then turned around, and you've got a tap on the end of this here, so that allows you to tap into the water supply for the motorhome. And then there's a temperature gauge that you can see there to adjust your temperature. So I'll put that in there. The wastewater, there's an indication inside on the control panel which I'll show you, to show you the fresh and the waste water levels. The wastewater is drained via this tap here, so you just open that up and let it flow onto the ground or onto the waste disposal point that's generally on site. And then above that we have the cable, so this is where you put the cable to gain access to your electric point. So this is going to give you your mains supply into the motorhome. The fuel filler on this is around the other side here. We'll just come to the front, we're around the other side, next to the so it's on the passenger side, and that's where your fuel filler is. So we're inside the motorhome now, and I'll show you the main control panel. So this is the main habitation door. Your step control, the step will actually come out as soon as you open the habitation door, and then when you start the engine it will retract as well. But the button for the step is that one there, so that's your electric step. The main control panel here is switched on and off by this button here, so everything that basically switches on your motorhome. You can select your engine battery as your preferred power supply if you wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it, really. That's only if you're ever in an emergency and you've depleted your leisure battery. So at the moment we're on leisure battery. If you press that, it goes over to vehicle battery. If you deplete both batteries, you're in trouble. Obviously you can't start your engine then. This switches on your water pump. So when you first fill up with water, you've got a tank on the outside of the motorhome that's full of water, and you need to pump that through into your taps and fill up the pipes and also the hot water boiler. So when you first fill up with water, switch that on, open up your tap on hot, like so. Wait until you get a pure flow of water coming out of your tap, then you know that you've filled up the pipes, depleted all the air out of the system, and your boiler is full. So if you switch on your boiler without doing that, you're just heating thin air. So that's the water pump system, and that switches on your external light, so that's your awning light outside. If you scroll through these controls here, that's just giving you the model number of the control panel. There's various event timers on this. So you can set your clock. You can switch on your tank heater. So that's for winter use. If it's in really freezing conditions, you want to prevent the tanks from freezing, this is your heater for those. So for winter use, if it's really cold, then it stops your water tanks from freezing. External temperature, telling you about your solar panel. So that's the solar current that's being drawn through your solar panel. So we've got 1.6 amps coming into the vehicle. Battery current, we're draining 9.4 amps. So you can see if we carry on like that, the battery is going to deplete slowly. Obviously if it was a really sunny day, then we'd get more from the solar panel. Wastewater, there's nothing in it, and your fresh water is empty as well. Vehicle battery, it gives you your vehicle battery status as well, so that's in perfect condition. And your leisure battery is in 11.8, but we're drawing power from that, so we've got all the lights switched on. And then we're back to the main menu. Across from that is your heating system. So to switch this on, press the button in the middle. The first one here is this section here. So to use this, you can scroll through by turning this here, and it'll select individual controls. So when it flashes like that, we select that, and then you select your required vehicle temperature, so 22 degrees, and then you can scroll through. This will operate your water temperature, so you can have 40 degrees or 60 degrees. If you select boost, it will it will take the power from the heating and direct it to heating the water. I wouldn't recommend that you do that. Just leave the water separately. I was going to switch that off because otherwise we'll get a warning to say it's not ignited. The next one along on your main control is how you want the water to be heated, so from what fuel. So you select that. You can select gas only. If you're off grid and you've not got an electric supply, then select gas. The next one is mix, and the lowest kilowatt of electric supply, so 1 kilowatt I think it is. So you've got gas and electric. The next one along is mix 2, so you've got gas and 2 kilowatts of electric. Electric only on 1 kilowatt and electric only on 2 kilowatts. So that's how you want to fuel the heating of the water and the heating of your motorhome. You can select fan only if you want through that vent function. You can set your time, and you can also set a timer. So you can set it to come on in the morning and off, like you can your domestic heating. You can set it to a timer, and then you've got your settings menu, but there is a control panel for that. So the basic functions are your temperature, your water temperature, your fuel, and your fan speed. To switch it off, you just press the button and hold it in, and that switches the control panel off. So working on around the motorhome then, we've got the drop down television, which is here, and the remote control is just there for it. This is the charger unit, so I would leave it in. I wouldn't worry about these because you can control all of these buttons via the main control panel, which I've already showed you. I mean, if you get a problem with the control panel, then yeah, you can override it via these buttons here. But that basically, the control panel speaks to this unit, and therefore these are a bit redundant. You can switch the whole system off by pressing that button there. You've got a bank of 12-volt fuses. Again, in the instruction manual, it'll tell you which fuse corresponds to which circuit. So if you've got a problem with, let's say, the lighting won't work inside your motorhome, then it could be that the fuse is blown. Refer to the manual, see which fuse it is, and then check that there. You've got a mains circuit breaker here. It's like a domestic circuit breaker that you find in your home. So you've got 3 banks of, so there'll be 3 circuits for your mains supply. So that's like your mains fuses basically. You can test that you're getting a power supply into your motorhome by pressing that button, and that will flip down. Above that, you've got a reverse polarity warning light. So if you plug into a site and the mains is on the negative side, this will tell you. It never really occurs in this country, but if you go abroad, sometimes they're not regulated, so they've wired the positive on the negative side, which is not a problem. It's just if you get an appliance that doesn't like reverse polarity. So just keep your eye on that. If that lights up, then you need to check your appliances are not wired for reverse polarity. That switches the charger on and off. That switches your space heater on and off, and that switches your water heater on and off via electric. But I'd just leave those switched on. They only really come on when you select them to via the control of the heating, which I've showed you. Next to that, you've got an aerial. So to adjust that, you unscrew this here, push the aerial up through the roof via this pole, and that'll allow you to adjust the position of the aerial. That's a booster box, so it boosts the signal for the aerial. Working onto the kitchen area then, we've got a straightforward hob, and there's not much to say about that really. I mean, the only thing I would warn you about is if that's red hot and you've just finished cooking, don't bring this down, because that will retain the heat. It'll radiate heat onto this and it'll shatter the glass lid. So moving on then, we have the bathroom area. So the main thing to talk about in here is the toilet. So to use that, you lift the lid, and then on the front here there's a handle which opens the valve, which is attached to the cassette which I showed you outside. So that blade is directly attached to the cassette, which I showed you on the outside of the motorhome. So to use the toilet, open that up, use the toilet, and then press your flush button, which is just here. When that's finished flushing, then you can close the valve. Also, this red light here is illuminated. The tank was actually full. We've not balloted the vehicle yet, so that will warn you that the tank is full, that the waste cassette is full. There is a fan that extracts there, so you can stop that fan by pressing that button just there. But yeah, this red light is warning you that the cassette is full, so that's your flush button. So that's basically how you use the toilet. Make sure that you close the valve up before you set off travelling, especially if you've got a full tank in there. You don't want that sloshing around for obvious reasons. The bed, you can access the storage on the outside for the bed by lifting the bed frame, and that's we've covered the area in there. So your boiler, that's where your boiler's housed, and right next to that was the valve that drains down your water out of the boiler. The water pump is just there should you need to ever service that, but just for that's where the water pump's housed. You shouldn't really need to do anything with that, but should you need to replace the water pump, that's where it's located. You've got a three-way fridge on this model. Let's just see. So to switch it on, it's that button there. I think this will probably be an automatic model. Let me just see. So at the moment it's trying to run on electric. You can run it on 12 volts, so that comes from the engine alternator, and you can also run it on gas. So to go through the functions, I'm pressing this button here. The A means automatic, so it will automatically select the most relevant power source. So first of all, it'll look for electric, then it'll try and find gas, and then it'll try and find 12 volt. The 12 volt will only keep it cool, it won't get it cool, so you need to switch it on gas at home first, or mains electric, and get it cold, and then it'll run on 12 volt and just keep it ticking over. This is your temperature control here. So you can see, you can scroll through the temperature. If it's a really hot day, then you want the fridge to be working a bit harder. If it's really cold and you leave it on full, it will ice up. So if it's really cold, you only want it on the lower settings. There's a de-icer for the freezer section if you press that button there. This has failed because we haven't got any gas, we're not connected to electric, and the engine isn't running. So if that happens and this spanner comes on here, that's just warning you that the fridge hasn't lit on gas and it's not operating on electric. So you'd need to switch that off and then start the process again. When you first put your gas bottles on, then you'll find that it takes a while to get the gas through the pipework and to the fridge. So that concludes the main controls on the motorhome. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer those in the interim between you collecting the motorhome and now. If not, then I'll be happy to answer any further questions you have on the day that you collect your new motorhome. And we look forward to seeing you on the happy day that you collect this new Autotrail motorhome.